This is becoming a saga, so I figured might as well keep it going. Let's talk a little bit about these changes. This was posted yesterday, almost 24 hours ago now at the time of me recording this, and we did test it on stream. So I want to give my thoughts on this. Quickly before we do, I will summarize my position on this if you have not been following all these videos. One, I am very thankful for Blizzard making adequate changes, big changes, very frequently. It's pretty much every week there was changes. There was the 1 week off because of the holiday there, but other than that, every week of the season there's been big changes, and many times there's been a lot of hot fixes throughout the week. At first, they were coming only on Mondays, but now they seem to have been ramping up their confidence in doing it during the week. And I think these are probably the biggest changes we've seen since that first week. And I want to talk about those changes to this dungeon and two dungeons specifically. But I also want to reiterate that if you've heard me be critical of this whole situation with them and this situation with tuning in general, it is simply because we have a finite time window for these dungeons. I've been talking a lot about this, but I just want to reiterate this for anybody who hasn't watched those previous videos, that I am very worried that by the time all of these dungeons get to the point where Blizzard and us as community would be happy with their balance, that it'll just be like, that's it. It's season ending in a month anyway, and it's gone, In Shadowlands and in previous expansions, it was like fine to have weeks and weeks and weeks of tuning because the dungeons were going to be there for years. And it was like, okay, well, they're changing things about the other side now in week 5 or 6 of the expansion that's going to be there for the next 2 years. And that seems to not be the case anymore. That being said, of course, they should continue to change them. I just don't know what their thoughts are on this, if they're satisfied, because it does seem a bit weird. And the weirdest one is how bad some of the timers are. So they took a very creative crack at this. So first of all, overgrown ancient explosive effect no longer happens on hungry lashers. So we did test this today. I saw a picture of it from yesterday before the hotfix. It was absolutely absurd. That boss really just has no business being in this game. I have to say it. It's really easy now, and whatever. That's fine, but it's just that they should never have made a fight with like 40 targets on it. It's so stupid. Anyway, so they fixed that. Now people are saying like, why don't they do other bosses? The big one was in Azure Vaults. To be honest, the answer to me, my answer to that question is it's simply not needed. Like, this is normally how a boss works. If there's ads on a boss, there's explosives. It's just with Algathar, you can easily fall so far behind on those ads that you just can't do the fight with explosives. Like before the changes, it was like really easy to have this happen. Now it's a lot harder for it to happen, but you can still have multiple sets of ads up at once. And that's not a wipe. That's like part of the strategy of the fight. And now it's like if you had 2 sets of those ads up, like any overlap at all, you're going to have like 15 explosive orbs up. So nothing's dying except you. So anyway, Azure Vault, onto that. Arcane Fury's Piercing Shard. This is the low rock guy. They shoot that frontal. It's all magic damage. Easy mode for Blood DK. Never really felt like it was that bad anyway. Did it today. Unbelievably easy now. Like they don't even touch you now. So that's really a big change. It's probably the biggest change they did, especially because this new kind of weird strategy that people are doing now where we're skipping like all the end. Very, very, very creative strategy. I would love to hear what Blizzard thinks about it because I have to say, this is probably the strangest route I've ever seen done in any dungeon. If you didn't see it, I did it on stream today. It didn't go great, but it's definitely going to be something I do from pretty much now on. Unstable Curator's Forbidden Knowledge increase. That's the big tall guy in the dungeon. I don't understand what the point of this spell is, or what the point of any of this type of thing is. Why would you increase the cooldown of the spell? I guess that simply means he's going to cast the spell less, and I don't know what benefit we get out of that. I don't really get that part. So if anybody has any commentary on that, please let me know. Arcane Construct health reduced by 25%, and here's where we start to get into an interesting territory here. So Azure Vault's famous for its timer being absurdly tight. Now with this new strategy and this new route, it's going to stop being as true, I think. But regardless, it's still going to be notable for that. What if they change the timer by just lowering the health of all the mobs? I don't know why they wouldn't just change the timer, but they seem extremely hesitant to do this. And it's not in just one direction either. Like Shadow Moon Battlegrounds timer is not, I mean, come on. Like I really don't know what's going on with timers, honestly. So I guess we're just keeping them the way they are. They must have a reason for it that we don't know about yet. And instead, they're going to tune the health pools. I really, really rarely ever seen them tune a health pool of a mob. They did this in Necrotic Wake. If you remember, in Season 2 of Necrotic Wake, they nerfed all the health of all the mobs in Necrotic Wake, like tons of them. Probably 70% of the trash in there got its health nerfed in some degree. I don't know why they did it then. I don't know why they're doing it now instead of just simply, like, I don't know what would cause them to want to do that, but there's a couple situations here where that is happening. Crystal Thrasher no longer uses Splintering Shard. So that is the big purple crystal guy. He's got like legs and arms for some reason. I don't know who created that. Looks kind of silly, but I don't understand what Splintering Shards is. People were trying to explain it to me. It says something to do with DPS. It's not the big purple circle that if you get hit by, you get rooted. We figured that out. So if anybody does know what that is, let me know. And then the Hornswogs have had their health reduced as well, but the new route pulls 0 of them. So that's interesting to me. We will see what that looks like. But as of right now, I'm not fighting those anymore, even though I do think they're some of the best trash in the game. Anyway, Telesh Greywing is the third boss, the dragon guy. This is probably the biggest change to any boss this season. There is now a 2-second delay before players take damage from frozen ground after the frost bomb. That is the ice puddle. Used to tick immediately, and then you'd almost always get hit by a second tick. Not always, but like if you didn't move accurately, you would get hit by a second tick. Now you will only be hit by that one tick if you don't move accurately, presumably 0 ticks if you move accurately. Of course, you can also AMS this. If you put AMS on before it comes out, you will not get the debuff. That will put the ice thing on you. Big tip for Death Knights. Talash Greywing's health has also been reduced by 10%. That's a big deal. Umber Skull's health reduced by 15%. Final boss's health has been reduced by 15%. That's a boss, you know what I mean? Used to be like a 4.5 minute fight. Should dramatically lower the effective timer in this dungeon. We'll see what it looks like over the course of the next month or so, but this is pretty substantial to me. These are 2 of the biggest health sinks in the dungeon, the 2 bosses that are right back to back like that. And Oppressive Miasma now reduces movement speed by 6% per stack, which I'm sure if any of you guys are playing not Death Knight, you're probably happy about. I don't care as a Death Knight, so don't know anything about it. And then the other thing we want to take a look at is Ruby Life Pools. This is another very problematic dungeon that I think, frankly, is just it's just never going to be tuned well. It has way too much inherent danger to it. And I think in a pug world, especially since it's very difficult to get under count without kind of, it's not as hard as I make it sound, but it's not an easy, it's not like a freehold type dungeon where you have 15 different routes you can do. I don't really like the tuning of this dungeon. I probably never will, but we have a good start here. Again, damage nerfs to Cinder Weaver's Cinder Bolts. Okay, I believe that's what they nerfed last time. I can't actually remember, but there's actually a typo. It says Cind Weavers. Cind Weavers. I don't think this is how it's spelled. Let me know if you guys know differently. This is literally just missing an R. Reduced the periodic damage of Thunderhead's Rolling Thunder by 30%. So a big nerf to that. That's a 50. I'm sorry. This is the 50% one. That's a big nerf. 30% still. That's huge. Damage of Flame Gullet's Molten Blood. 25% nerf. So massive, massive nerfs to 2 of the hardest mobs in there. I mean, 2 of the hardest mobs in the season. Let's put it that way. And pretty much a big part of the difficulty of the dungeon. We also have reduced the periodic damage of Bladebound Destroyer's Inferno by 25%. I believe that is the kind of just AoE dot, or maybe he casts it. I'm not exactly sure, but just some kind of AoE from the big fire elementals that you have to fight to clear out that middle ring. Then we have Meladrusa, explosive effects, no longer spawns from that either, from the whelps. Okay, and again, that's another one where there's just way too many ads, but it only happens twice in the whole fight. Then we have Kokia Blazehoof, increases the cast time of Blazebound's Firestorm's Roaring Blaze to 3 seconds, was 2 seconds. So now it'll be easier for when some clueless prot warrior drags the boss 50 yards away, somebody can still get the interrupt for him. And then Kairaka and Eckhart Stormbane reduces the periodic damage of Inferno Core by 20% and reduces the damage of interrupting Cloudburst by 30%. So I did not even really know that did much damage at all, but those are substantial nerfs to everything in the dungeon that's hard. Still no change to Kokia Blazehoof's ability to melee you while she's running. We're not worried about that anymore. I think it's all good. But I'm just shocked to see this. I talked to a few people, well, mostly one person specifically, who did say that he felt like this made a massive change. I mean, I think if you just look at the mathematics of it, it didn't. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way I mean, especially if you're not pulling these mobs, there's no way that basically one mob type being 25% less health and two bosses a total 25% less health. That's not going to suddenly make this dungeon the easiest dungeon in the game. But there's concern out there where people are saying like, oh, they're nerfing it too hard. And all I can say to that is I think it's probably not coming from a very healthy perspective. If you say that about these dungeons, like you're being very unfair, or you're being very biased. Maybe I don't really want to say biased, but let's put it this way: these bosses could all be nerfed by 100%, and they still aren't going to be easier than some of the bosses that are in Quarter Stars or Shadow Moon Barrier Ground. Okay, so there's a big discrepancy here. We've talked about this a lot now, but I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this potential creative approach here. Timer is too tight. Let's just lower the mob's health. Do you think that is an effective strategy? People have been talking about Halls of Valor for a while now as well, being too tight. Frankly, I do not feel like it is as tight as people make it sound. It is nowhere on the level of Azure Vaults, but I do believe that the problem with Halls of Valor, it is much harder to do creative routes like we have now found with Azure Vault. So let me know what you guys think. Think there's a possibility here that Blizzard knows something we don't about all this, because we are now 6 weeks in and they have not taken what I believe to be the easiest approach to solving this, just changing the timers. That was something they used to do all the time through Legion, BFA, Shadowlands. I haven't seen it once yet. So let me know what you guys think about all this. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.